Hey Rose, welcome to Tamira's Throne Room. My name is Tamira, and today I'm going to give another prophetic word. This word is called low faith, try, praise, and worship. All right, so this word is just reminding anyone who needs it that for many of us, you've been waiting on God, all right, for an answer, for your breakthrough, for all these things because you got a word, you got a promise from God, and you're just waiting patiently for it to manifest. So when your faith gets kind of low during these periods or seasons where you're waiting on God, you start feeling a little depressed sometimes, or you can start second guessing, if you really heard from God. So in conjunction with prayer, just going to God and talking to Him, you also want to incorporate just praise and worship. So it's important to know that God doesn't necessarily need you to worship Him. We were created to worship, okay? So you need worship because it is what puts you back in a positive mood. It's what puts you back in a faith mindset. And so even though God doesn't necessarily need you to worship Him, God gets the glory and the honor when you worship Him. And He also honors you, okay? And so you can worship in your own unique way, though. Many times I worship by playing music or singing. I've worshiped during exercise routines, dancing, singing. I keep a journal with what God has done for me. And so I'll go back and look at that journal, those journal entries, and see like God did this and this and this, and He's definitely going to do what I'm waiting for Him to do. And so your mood does a complete 180, and all of a sudden you're back in a faith mindset. All right. And so even just thanking God, just thank you, God, for doing this. Thank you, God, for what you're going to do. Thank you, God, for what you're about to do. Thank you, God, that it's already done. All right. So you're already just putting it into existence, saying that even though I don't see it right now, I know that you are going to do it. I know that it's already been done. All right. And so other ways to worship is if you have an instrument. God likes music. All right. Bring out your drums, bring out the piano, the clarinet, whatever you play as an instrument. If you're a whatever you play as an instrument, if you're an instrument player, what is it called? Yeah, whatever you play as an instrument, if you're skilled in that area, play it. Okay, they said David in the Bible was skilled on the harp, so even that was a form of worship. Okay, maybe you're an artist, you paint. Paint a picture for God, or just include Him in what you're painting. So for me, worship is just anything that acknowledges God, that uplifts God, and so it uplifts your spirit, okay? And so it's not necessarily designated to clapping and shouting, because God gave us gifts and talents, and so those things actually can be considered as forms of worship when we use them to worship God. Okay, so you can take David in the Bible, for example. Again, David danced and he wrote God poems. All right, he wrote God poems. That was a form of worship. And sometimes we look at worship as just like inside a church building, just clapping and singing, and that's it. But it can be more than that. It just depends on your personal relationship with God. It's up to you how you want to worship God. Okay, so in 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 14 through 22, it talks about David dancing for God. And it says, David danced before the Lord with all his might. With all his might. Like, I don't know how hard he was dancing, but it said with all his might. Okay? Not only did he dance, but it says in verse 19, he gave to every Israelite man and woman in the crowd a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins, and then they all went home. So he threw a whole party, okay? Someone made cakes. So if you bake, that is a form of worship if you want it to be. So when David, and then at the end of this, there's a girl watching David worship God in his own way, dancing with all his might. And the girl is Saul's daughter, I believe. And so Saul's daughter comes over to, so yeah, Saul's daughter, Saul's daughter, Michal, comes to David, and she's like, basically, you should be ashamed for dancing like that. You're making a fool of yourself. You look so stupid. All these different things. And you know what David says? He says, I was dancing before the Lord. I was worshiping the Lord. I did this for God. Okay? So God chose me above your family, above your father's house. And he appointed me as a leader of Israel. And he said, so I'm going to celebrate the Lord. However, I want to celebrate the Lord. And so it says in verse 22, yes, and I am willing to look even more foolish than this. Okay, he didn't care about what anybody thought because it was his relationship with God. That was how he chose to worship. And it says, even if I have to be humiliated in my own eyes, this is how I choose to worship. This is what I'm choosing to do. This is what I do with God in my own time, okay? So one of the things that Michal had said to David was, these people are watching you worship. And David was like, those same servant girls that are watching me, they aren't looking at me in disgust. They're looking at me like, what kind of God do you serve? Because we don't party like that, where we're from. So can you hook us up with your God? So understand, if your formal worship is prayer, that's fine too. But also know, your prayer doesn't always have to be a loud prayer. You don't always have to be shouting at the top of your lungs or anything like that. Like, God is chill too. He chills. He's just like, oh, we can chill today, okay? But you can literally be sitting on a yoga mat and just talk to God, and that is still a form of worship. And so when we worship, it changes our mood and it uplifts our faith. So it reignites the faith within us. And so if you have a low faith day, or you just have this desire to just want to worship God, then you have to understand that it's your personal relationship with God. It's nobody else's business how you choose to worship. So it's okay if the way you worship isn't status quo. If everybody's not doing it just like you, that's fine. As long as you're not worshiping any other gods, go ahead and break dance, all right? So stay in faith, and I hope this helped you guys. Peace, Royals.